If this story spoke to you, if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or told you were too much, then you're not alone. We're building a space for people like you who lead with quiet strength and relentless purpose. Don't just watch, be part of the conversation. Drop a comment and share your journey. We want to hear your voice. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. This is more than a channel, it's a movement. Let's build something powerful together, one story at a time. More adaptable, I repeated softly, keeping my voice composed even as my fingernails dug into the skin of my palm beneath the conference table. Across from me, Elaine Porter, my director, sat confidently in her spacious office overlooking downtown Denver. Mid-50s, expensive heels pinching, designer jacket stiff on her shoulders. Her tone was sweet, but condescending. "Lena, you're incredibly talented. But Tracy, well, she's got that social spark. She's more approachable. Approachable. Not more skilled, not more impactful, just easier to digest." I was 44, and I joined Vanguard Apex Consulting at 38, shifting careers after a decade as a nonprofit program leader. I had thrown myself into this world headfirst. 6 years of problem-solving high-risk accounts, rebuilding broken teams, and flying out last minute to save sinking contracts. In that time, I'd more than doubled our Pacific Northwest portfolio, introduced a scalable mentorship framework that was now used company-wide, and trimmed over $1.8 million in inefficiencies. But Tracy, with her polished Instagram presence and corporate pep quotes, was being named regional lead. I watched Elaine pretend to sort documents, waiting for me to smile, to say thank you, to stay gracious. Instead, I placed a folded envelope onto her desk. "Thank you for the clarity," I said with a steady tone. "This is my resignation. Effective 2 weeks from today." Her expression shifted. "Lena, wait, let's talk through this." "There's no need," I replied, rising to my feet. "You've made your priorities clear, and I've made mine." What Elaine didn't know, what no one in the Denver office had bothered to notice, was that while Tracy built her brand, I was building a business. A leadership analytics firm, fully licensed, cash flow positive since last spring. I hadn't lost today. I'd simply outgrown the ceiling. As I walked out of her office, a stillness passed over the floor. Heads turned. Conversations hushed. I knew Tracy was already picturing where to hang her framed, be bold, print above my former desk. But I moved with quiet resolve, heading back to my cubicle like it was any other day. Inside that envelope was something more than a resignation. Page 2 was a notice of patent approval for the adaptive leadership algorithm I'd been refining off hours for nearly 3 years. During my final days, I documented everything. Metrics. Impact. Systems built from scratch. Not to steal, but to mark clearly what I'd accomplished. On Thursday, Tracy leaned casually over my desk, her smile edged with superiority. "Hope you're not too upset, Lena. I know you were aiming for that spot." I met her eyes briefly, then continued exporting final reports. "Not at all," I replied, tone smooth. "I'm excited for what's ahead for both of us." She walked away, satisfied. She had no idea that my team's performance was powered by a system she couldn't replicate, and now never would. Because the algorithm, the one that drove retention, engagement, and results, was now mine, protected by law. A week later, I got a message from Mark Simmons, CEO of Northbridge Dynamics, one of our biggest competitors. We met over coffee. "We've followed your work for years," he said, sliding a folder across the table. Inside was more than a job. It was equity, creative control, a stake in the future. And this time, I didn't need anyone's approval to step into it. The folder rested between us on the mahogany table. Mark's voice was calm but resolute. "We've been waiting for someone with your vision, Elise. Someone who delivers real outcomes, not just polished impressions." As I signed the equity agreement, I felt something shift deep within me. It wasn't about attention or applause. It was about finally being seen for the systems I built, the results I delivered, and the future I shaped. On my last afternoon at Vanguard Apex, just after handing in my badge, Elaine called me back into her sleek, glass-walled office one final time. The confidence she normally wore like armor had slipped. Her hands shook as she held up a thick report, the same one I'd included with my resignation letter. Elise, this performance model, why didn't you present this sooner? I sat across from her, smoothing the sleeve of my tailored charcoal jacket. I did. 3 times. Over the past 2 years. Each proposal was brushed aside. You said we needed stronger social cohesion, not deeper systems. She flipped through the pages, the blood draining from her face as she absorbed the hard data, optimized workflows, resource forecasting, and retention analytics. And this is protected, she asked. Filed in October. Approved in March. The intellectual property is mine. Northbridge Dynamics is already integrating it company-wide. Elaine blinked. Northbridge, she echoed. Elise, no. That's our direct competitor in the Pacific Northwest. And now they're my partners, I said. What about commitment? You've been with us for 6 years. I tilted my head slightly. Loyalty? I said quietly. Like when you promoted Tracy for hosting cocktail mixers instead of reviewing quarterly performance reports. Or when my strategic planning sessions were canceled for morale-boosting luncheons. She opened her mouth again, but I stood. You had 6 years to value what I brought. I didn't leave over a title. I left to be respected. She made a final, desperate offer. Senior VP, immediate raise, flexibility. But the moment had passed, and so had I. As I left the office, I heard her voice behind me dialing upstairs, but the call came too late. I'd already begun the next chapter. If you've ever been overlooked despite delivering real value, stick around. You're going to want to see what Elise creates next. The patent was legally mine. The contract was signed. And as for Tracy, she was about to find out what happens when charm meets a void of substance. That evening, as I packed the last of my belongings into a leather satchel, I noticed a pink sticky note stuck to my monitor. Sad to see you go, stay in touch. Smiley face. Tracy. I smiled faintly, crumpled the note, and tossed it into the trash. She'd hear my name again soon enough. The entire sector would. My first morning at Northbridge Dynamics was like walking into another world. Gone were the beige cubicles and vague compliments. My new office in Seattle's Innovation District had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, minimalist design, and a polished brass nameplate. Elise Marin, partner, Strategic Systems Innovation. But the biggest difference wasn't the space, it was the way I was introduced. Mark, the CEO, called an all-hands meeting. He didn't read my resume. He told my story. He spoke of the system I built, the outcomes it generated, and how it was transforming operations across firms. Elise didn't come here to fit a role, he said. She came to lead a revolution in performance architecture. Her work speaks for itself. At Vanguard, I was invisible behind the curtain. At Northbridge, I finally stepped into the spotlight. And that was just the beginning. The deal was done. Midway through a leadership alignment session, my phone vibrated. A message from Leo Ramirez, one of the few insightful minds still at Vanguard Apex. Turn on the news. Big wave coming. I stepped into my office, overlooking Seattle's shimmering Elliott Bay, and pulled up the headline. Vanguard Apex hemorrhages 30% of clients after internal system failures. The exposé was scathing. Missed delivery dates. Runaway costs. 3 cornerstone accounts gone. The article described Vanguard's infrastructure as chaotic, outdated, and dangerously reliant on undocumented procedures. But the line that hit hardest came from a former client of mine. Their service has deteriorated, said Thomas Kwan, CEO of Oralink Systems. We once trusted them with enterprise-wide solutions. Now they can't hit basic milestones. It's like their operational brain vanished. I let a slow smile form. That operational brain? That had been me. The framework they brushed aside. The system they handed to someone who barely grasped the architecture, let alone how to maintain it. A second buzz. Leo again. Tracy's breaking down in the team lounge. Total panic. I leaned back, the early afternoon sunlight casting reflections across my polished desk. I didn't need vindication. I had outcomes. If you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or pushed aside in favor of someone louder and less capable, subscribe to this channel, because Elise's story is just getting started. And the next chapter? It's going to shake the entire consulting sector. Tracy had spent years echoing industry jargon, nodding her way into rooms that others paved the way for. But now the facade had cracked. And Elaine, who had wagered everything on likability over leadership, was watching the fallout live. Meanwhile, I was focused on bigger plays. At Northbridge Dynamics, my platform wasn't just in use, it was transforming how we delivered value. Project cycles shrank by over half. Client satisfaction hit record highs. Operational metrics exceeded every target. Mark, our CEO, had already approved expansion across all departments. 3 Fortune 100 firms were in talks to adopt the system outright. They dismissed me. Now they were chasing my blueprint. One crisp Thursday morning, 6 months after my exit from Vanguard, I arrived at my office to find Mark Simmons holding a folded copy of the Seattle Market Journal. "Seen this?" he asked, lifting the front page. Vanguard Apex declares crisis over workforce exodus and systemic breakdown. I took the paper and nodded. "Looks like they're dismantling what's left," I said. "They tried to rebuild what you left behind," Mark said. "But they never understood the logic that powered it. They thought it was just software," I replied. "But the structure, the philosophy, was the real innovation." Mark's gaze held mine, steady and impressed. "Which is why the board has made a unanimous decision. Starting next week, you'll step into the role of Executive Vice President, Strategic Innovation. You haven't just advanced our systems, you've realigned our trajectory." A quiet wave of fulfillment rose in me. This was acknowledgement, the kind rooted in impact, not performance. That evening, as the Seattle skyline bathed in gold, I noticed a new message in my inbox. From Elaine Porter. Subject: Apology. "I assume you've seen what's unfolding at Vanguard. I need to say, I was wrong." That was the opening line of the email from Elaine Porter. "Overlooking your work was the greatest professional misstep I've ever made. The board sees it now. They've seen the platform metrics. They've seen what we gave up. I stepped down last Friday. Tracy resigned the month before. Turns out deliverables don't respond to charisma." I stared at the message, not with surprise, but with a quiet, wry recognition. I didn't need the apology. But its timing, its wording, the way she had finally acknowledged what I knew all along, there was a certain symmetry to it. She continued. "I can't undo what's past. I just wanted you to know you were right. Results matter. They always did. I only wish I had understood that when it counted." Elaine. I read the message once more, not because it stirred anything in me, but because it reminded me how far I'd come. Years ago, something like this might have brought tears or some internal shift. But now, in my corner office overlooking Seattle's waterfront, that era had long closed. The morning sun danced across the glass panel that displayed my patent approval. On the opposite wall hung a recognition plaque from our Q2 Performance Summit. Beside it, a framed article from TechFoundry Weekly naming me one of the most influential women shaping applied systems intelligence. Elaine's note wasn't closure. It was just context. I clicked reply and typed simply, "Thank you for your message. You're right, outcomes matter. I wish you success in what's next." I hit send, then glanced around the space I had earned, not inherited. Every inch of this office spoke not of luck, but of deliberate, disciplined effort. The next day, I called a team-wide sync in the strategy suite. Designers, engineers, analysts, the room filled quickly. They weren't showing up for appearances. They were invested. When the room settled, I stood at the front. "Before we dive into our next rollout," I said, I want to tell you a brief story. Not about algorithms or infrastructure, but about worth. About how we see it in ourselves and how we choose to see it in others. Heads turned, posture straightened. I continued. This company isn't built on noise. It's built on purpose. On the idea that capability doesn't need validation, it needs vision. And when you align purpose with quiet confidence, you don't just grow. You lead. I could see it in their eyes. Not just attention, but understanding. We weren't just launching products. We were building principles. That evening, driving north on Aurora Avenue, I passed the Vanguard Apex headquarters. Their once proud signage looked worn now, flickering above a dim fourth-floor window where a for-lease placard hung. Another round of downsizing, most likely. But I felt no bitterness. Only gratitude. They hadn't seen my worth. And in doing so, they gave me the push to define it on my own terms. Because sometimes, rejection is simply the invitation to build freely, to create without limit. And sometimes, the best kind of success isn't loud, it's undeniable. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed. A message from Leo lit up the screen. Vanguard's board is asking about you. They're wondering, would you consider returning as CEO? I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back. Thank you, Leo. But I'm exactly where I belong. Because true success isn't proving them wrong. It's living in the reality where you were right all along. It's about standing tall in your own worth, even when everyone else doubts you. It's about refusing to shrink so someone else feels comfortable and choosing instead to expand toward your purpose. That's where the real journey begins. Pulling into the garage of my Seattle townhouse, I reflected on all the other Elises out there, seasoned professionals quietly delivering excellence, yet overlooked because they don't clam up for attention or play the corporate popularity game. Maybe my story will reach one of them. Maybe it'll be the spark they need to stop waiting for permission and start crafting success on their own terms. Because sometimes a door slammed shut is the universe pointing you toward a better entrance. You take the letdowns, the empty praise, and you convert them into forward motion, into frameworks, products, and legacies that prove too much was merely code for too powerful. That evening, seated at my home workspace and poring over international partnership proposals for the analytics engine I'd quietly architected, I felt an overwhelming calm. Above my desk hung, in a sleek black frame, the very phrase Elaine once flung at me. You focus too much on performance. She wasn't wrong. That exact focus propelled me here, into leadership, into invention, into absolute clarity about where I belonged. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. This isn't solely my narrative. It belongs to anyone ever told they're too intense, too driven, too unconventional, or just not the right fit. If you see yourself in these lines, reach out in the comments. Share where you stand in your own saga. I know how isolating it feels to produce real impact yet still go unnoticed. Been there. You aren't invisible. You aren't asking for too much by seeking respect for what you bring. If this resonates, please subscribe. Become part of a circle that values quiet determination, hard-earned accomplishments, and genuine resilience. No fanfare required. We're forging something here for people like us. And if I may offer this piece of guidance, stop hunting for approval. Stop molding yourself to someone else's comfort zone. Don't let their inability to recognize your value extinguish your belief in it. Fuel your ambition with their doubt. Let their silence be the workspace for your creations. Keep showing up. Keep iterating. Keep innovating. One day, they'll realize what they forfeited, and by then, you'll already have built something unimaginable. This is your signal. This is your moment. You don't need to prove them wrong. You simply need to prove yourself right. At 45, I've learned the fiercest victories often follow the harshest rejections. I've discovered that turning a blind eye to naysayers isn't indifference, it's empowerment. And the greatest gift rejection ever gave me was the freedom to build without boundaries. So here's to everyone who has been underestimated. Here's to the quiet leaders, the behind-the-scenes champions, the architects of change. Your strength isn't something to hide, It's what will reshape the world. If you're ready to lean into your power and chart your own course, join us. The blueprint is out there. All that's missing is you.